I am Dracula. I bid you welcome.
Oh, it's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Thou shalt rise again.
Power to make multitudes run squealing in terror at the touch of my little invisible finger.
Do you believe in werewolves?
To a new world of gods and monsters.
Hey everybody, welcome back to our retrospective on the Universal Monsters series, and we are going down the box set, and I'm excited. I specifically asked to lead this one. Chad, what movie are we talking about today?
Son of Frankenstein, the return back to the horror movies after taking 3 years off.
That's right. Yeah, it's how Universal got its groove back. So, Now, let me ask you, I know you only recently, you watched Dracula's Daughter for the first time for the last one. Had you seen Son of Frankenstein before?
Yes, I'd watched, when I first bought the box set, I went through all the Frankenstein movies, like first thing when I first got it.
Excellent. And how do you feel about this one?
So, while I was rewatching it, I kind of thought of this analogy that it might be just me. Maybe somebody else out there will hear it and kind of see what I'm talking about. Probably not. But to me, it was kind of like Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein, to me, almost felt like Terminator 1 and Terminator 2. We started with one story. We got bigger, but then it was done. They finished. And then with this, obviously, with Son of Frankenstein, Ghost, Frankenstein meets Wolfman, House of Frankenstein, all that, they were able to keep it going. But it was still that mindset of like, you could have stopped. We kind of never needed this film. You know what I mean?
But I say thank God we've got it, because
no. I'm not saying too. Oh no, I agree. I am very glad we got this film, because this film, it's like, while I still think, even after rewatching it, Bride is still my favorite. But this one, to me, ties with the original.
So, one thing that definitely sets this one apart from the original and from Bride is the monster is no longer the star of the show, I would say.
He's barely in the movie.
He no longer speaks. He got speech in Bride, and they took away speech. But you know what? Karloff is still, with the minimal material they gave, somehow he classes it up, and what we lose in the monster, we are made up for with Baron Wolf von Frankenstein and the inimitable Bela Lugosi as Igor.
You know what? Dracula may be his most famous design role. I thought he was 1,000 times the actor as Igor than he was as Dracula.
I absolutely agree. I 100% agree. This was like truly, and it's funny because the classic story goes, he was offered the role to be the monster originally, and he turned it down because he saw himself as too much of a handsome leading man to take that role. But I'll tell you what, Igor is not a sexy role. And I genuinely feel like he got the opportunity to act with Karloff, and he wanted to outstage him.
And he, in a way, he did. I mean, Karloff was still excellent as the monster, but Igor is the most famous thing about this. I mean, this is where the stereotypical hunchback called Igor. Like we said when we talked the first Frankenstein, no, it was Fritz. But everyone associates the name Igor with hunchbacks.
Even though in this movie, Igor is not technically a hunchback. He's just got a broken neck.
Mm-hmm. So the name lives on, even if the character of whatever he was. I mean, he almost looked like a prototype design to the Wolfman. He's all hairy. Almost. He's got weird teeth.
Yeah, but you know what? Let's think about this. When people imitate Dracula, when people think Dracula, they think of Bela Lugosi. And when people think of Frankenstein's hunchback assistant, they think Igor, who was made famous by Bela Lugosi. So he might be the magic to making these things so memorable.
I mean, the guy was a legend. There's a reason he's still remembered for, I mean, obviously he had other roles, but it's like, he's really always only going to be remembered for Dracula and Igor, really.
Really, yeah. But okay, so how do you feel about our other star of the movie, Basil Rathbone, as Baron Wolf von Frankenstein?
He brought a level of energy that, unfortunately, the original Henry Frankenstein just did not have after the first movie, it felt like.
Well, I
know he was only in 2, but it's like Basil Rathbone just brought something new to the table. It felt like he was charismatic. He had energy, and it felt like he was just like acting his ass off, and it was like extremely believable of this character and what he was doing.
Like you said, acting his ass off is a really good way to put it, because I love Colin Clive as Henry Frankenstein, but Wolf Frankenstein, it's a totally different performance. It's a totally different character. But the way when his family moves to the town, I forget what the name of the town is.
It was the town of Frankenstein.
Right, and everyone resents the name of Frankenstein, but he comes in and he's so cheerful to meet everyone. He's just like, "Hello, neighbors, how are you? My wife and son and I are happy to meet you all."
And they all just wander off in the rain.
Yeah, exactly. They want nothing to do with it.
So, you know what? What year does this take place in? Because when did the original take place? Because, I mean, now we got trains, and in the original time period, all we had was carriages. That's a common, I'm not sure if we've touched on this yet, that's a common question about the Universal monster movies in general. What time period are we in? Because sometimes we see people in carriages, sometimes we see them in cars of the time period. In Frankenstein, I mean, in Dracula, it felt like that could have taken place in like the early 1800s, and then in the next, I remember we forgot to say it in the last episode, Dracula's daughter, they openly said they took an airplane, and I'm like, what?
Huh. Wow, I totally forgot about that. You know what? To me, that's part of like the world that these movies create. Is we're in some sort of fantasy horror land where we don't know what time period we're in.
Yeah, I mean, because wasn't it like we'll get to the Wolfman eventually. Didn't the Wolfman like take place in contemporary modern day 40s? And then in the next one, they're back in ye olden times with the Frankenstein monster.
Well, you know what's so funny is I think they're still in, because it's a sequel to the Wolfman, so that one has to technically still be in modern time. And you know what? I'm gonna jump ahead here a little bit. You remember the great scene from Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman where they're just having that big festive party in Germany?
That is
song.
One of the best scenes of all of these films. That is one of the catchiest songs of all time.
No, but it's so. But you know what's so funny is I remember. I think it was last October. I showed Matt Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman for the first time because he had never seen it, and I showed him the movie, and it got to that point where they're having this huge festive celebration, and Matt was just like, "Wait, Ken, this movie takes place in Germany, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's just like, "These people are having a really good time for Germany in the 1940s. I'm like, "Holy shit, they are." Like, they were not having a good time.
Right? Wow.
But anyways, we're jumping ahead, and I may make that exact same reference when we actually talk about Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. I jumped ahead. Let's get back. Really, I've heard, and I'm going to name drop him again, James Rolfe. He said that really the biggest draw of Son of Frankenstein is the way the three characters play off each other, and that's Basil Rathbone as Baron Frankenstein, Bela Lugosi as Igor, and Lionel Atwell as Inspector Krogh.
Oh, excuse me. Krogh, you would not expect that character to have been as good as he was. You would have just expected another prick cop, but he was the exact opposite of probably what we were expecting him to be. Like, it's like he wanted, like, his goal was to stop the monster, but not at the cost of arresting or killing Wolf.
Yeah, it's like he resented the Frankenstein name as much as the townspeople, but he didn't place the blame on this son.
Right, like everybody else did. He
And
was like, it is what it is. Just don't awaken the monster.
and you know what's one of my favorite scenes in this movie?
Hmm.
Is when he and Wolf are playing darts. And their banter in that scene. And I especially love the line that Baron says. He says something along the lines of, "Is it that old legendary monster of my father's time? Or am I supposed to have whipped one up as a housewife whips up an omelet?"
Because it's
Just
like,
really, this is the best acted of the Frankenstein movies so far.
oh yeah, definitely. Except for maybe Pretorius.
True.
Think is one of the best characters ever. But what I liked, and again, like you said, I feel like we're gonna reference James Rolfe a lot, but he was right, because it did get me thinking. What happened after Bride of Frankenstein and before this one? How did Krogh lose his arm? Where did Igor come from? Where, how did the monster get struck by lightning? Because that all could have been its own movie. You know what I mean?
I know. How did the monster lose speech? Maybe it was the strike of lightning.
That's what
What?
When I was rewatching it, that's what I thought. I'm like, yeah, it was just when he got struck by lightning, I bet. It just destroyed his voice box or something. I don't know.
Yeah. You know who is another fun character in this movie? Is his son Peter, played by Donnie Dunnigan. Well, hello!
Bambi himself.
You know what's funny is when I showed this movie to Matt, because he had never seen it, I showed this movie to him. The kid does that line like twice. When he just walks in the room, he's like, "Well, hello." And the second time he does it, Matt's just like, "Man, that kid's going to make that a catchphrase. He's really trying to shoehorn that in." He's like, "I'm going to get him with this."
And you know what? I'm sorry, his acting is not good.
But this was back in the day. Nothing much was expected from child actors.
I know, but
it was show up and say your lines.
I know, but it was like, what? I know, it's more of just like I had to say it, but it's like I know he was trying, but I mean, what could they expect? They didn't have like acting schools back then. How old was he? Like, let's see, when
he was like 5.
He was born in 34.
He
was born in 34. This came out in 39.
He must have been 4 when they were filming it.
Yeah, he was 4.
Yeah.
So I can't really look at any 4-year-old and expect any form of acting out of them.
Also, I've got to give him some credit, because what's interesting is, of course, he's the only member of this cast that's still alive today, and he shows up to like horror conventions and things for the fans.
Now that is someone you want to meet. That is someone who like has been around for the golden every era of horror.
Mm-hmm.
And also, did you hear the James Rolfe's? Did you hear James Rolfe's fan theory on who his character became?
Oh, of course. He grew up to be young Frankenstein in the Mel Brooks movie. And what's funny is he pointed out that Gene Wilder was born around the same time. So Gene Wilder could have theoretically played him.
It's funny. Every time I watch a Frankenstein movie, I always think of Young Frankenstein, because it's really one of the best parodies ever.
Let's see. Yeah, Gene Wilder was born in 33, so he would have been, just a year older.
You almost wish they would have.
Like,
but then it wouldn't even have been
who he would grow up to be.
It wouldn't even have been a parody at that point. It would have been a direct sequel.
A direct sequel, yeah. But, I mean, and it's funny because he's sort of got the same hairstyle even.
That's true. It was a good connection.
Top. Yeah.
So just story-wise, what did you think of the like story being told here? Do you think it worked? Was there anything you might have changed from what you saw?
I mean, I can't think of a way to make it better. I think it's pretty well written. What's interesting is this was the first one. This was the first of the Frankenstein movies where they pretty much had no more Mary Shelley material that they were pulling from. So this was like totally new material, and you would think that would make it bad, but I think it's great. I really like the just the way that, you know, sort of like his father had to be tempted the way he was in Bride. You know, he sort of gets tempted by Igor to, you know, bring a better legacy to the Frankenstein name with this monster.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you think what's his face Wolf kind of got away with his crimes? Do you think he should have been held accountable for what he did for bringing the monster back?
It was a little funny that, like, at the end, everyone's just cool with him, and he's just like, "Well, goodbye, townspeople. My family and I are leaving you now." And like, I just imagine he and his family get in that train. They go off, and he's just like, "Phew, that was a close one. Those idiots almost held me liable for all those deaths."
Like he didn't take us out. Wasn't this movie supposed to be in color also?
Yes, I think so, but I'm so glad it wasn't.
Yeah, because there's just something about black and white that makes it like. I almost feel like if they'd switched to color, these movies would have been fine. They'd still be classics, and it's obviously all we would know. But it's like there almost would have been like a flow that would have been missing from it. You know what I mean?
It would have been broken. Yeah.
Yeah, because it would have been like, oh yeah, the first two are black and white, and then the rest are in color. Weird.
Well, I'll tell you. You know what that would not be as weird as is the original of The Fly is in color, but it had a sequel, I think called Return of the Fly or Son of the Fly, that's in black and white. And how often do you see that?
Never. Absolutely never. I've only seen the original.
That's when they had no budget left.
I haven't seen any of those
you
sequels.
should. It's really good.
Save that for the sequel to this retrospective.
Yeah, one of our grab bags there.
Right.
What else? I feel like there's more I really want to say about this movie.
What I like about Igor in this movie, just to throw something random out there, is just how, like we said, it's an amazing role for Bela, but it's like, you don't even, as weird as it sounds, you don't even know it's him. Like, just like that scene where he was being interrogated by all the police, and he was reminding him, he's like, everyone who voted to hang me, there's only 2 of you left, and he's like basically taunting all the cops, like, you tried to kill me and it didn't work. And just like a scene, and it's like going from the classy Count Dracula to this. I mean, there's a scene when he's leaving that courthouse and he coughs all over one of the jurors, and he's like, you coughed on me, and he just laughs at him and walks off. I'm like, that's,
you know what? You know what connection I'm going to make? You know what comparison I'm going to make? I mean, and we've only seen a little of this, but Colin Farrell as the Penguin in the Batman. I mean, much like that, Lugosi is unrecognizable in that makeup.
That's a good comparison because, or, you know, okay, and you know what? I'll say it, even though probably other people are going to be like, how did you not realize it? The first time I watched Tropic Thunder, I had no idea that was Tom Cruise as Les Grossman. Somebody had to point it out to me, and I was like, holy shit, I thought that was just a fat asshole.
I only knew because I had like heard promotion that he was going to be in that movie, and so I was able to spot him.
But yeah, I guess if you didn't know this was Bela Lugosi, like if you watched Dracula and then this, I don't think anyone would know it was him.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, borderline unrecognizable. I mean, now that I know, when I was a kid, I could barely tell, but you know, now as an adult, I can sort of see past it and see, you know, the shape of his face. But he's, almost unrecognizable as the character. Absolutely. Also, here's a question. Another question that needs to be filled in between the movies is, where did he get that like wool vest that the monster wears?
That's always one of those things where you look at and go, what was the idea behind this? Why did you decide to do this?
Mm-hmm.
Or like adding the giant sulfur pit inside the castle where you could easily trip and fall into it. No railing whatsoever.
Okay, so Bride of Frankenstein has that lever that's not encased in anything, that is self-destruct, and now we've got... You know what? When was OSHA created? Because I don't think it existed back then.
Giant sulfur pit with no railing around it. Don't trip. And if somebody falls in, oh no. Just write it off as a work casualty.
Yeah, as much as I do really like this movie, you know what? That reminds me of one little moment that I think, I had to suspend my disbelief, is when, because the monster is really friendly with the little son, Peter, through most of the movie. But then, like, suddenly at the very end, he's, like, ready to kill the kid.
Imagine if they had. Imagine if they'd actually killed him.
Oh, man. I'm not sure they could have done that in 1939.
Hey, they killed that little girl in the first one off screen, kind of.
That's true. That's true.
Nothing will ever compare to the kid's death in the remake of The Blob, though.
Oh.
Was...
I told you on that episode of Film Feast when I first saw that, because Matt showed me that movie. I had never seen it, and as those kids are walking through the sewer, I'm like, well, this is pretty tense, but I know they're not going to kill the kids. And then Bob immediately comes up and swallows the kid, and Matt's like, well, Ken, nobody's safe.
Oh, hello. Do we ever stay on target? No, we don't, and we probably never will.
Nah, well, that's my ADD kicking in. Who directed this? Roland V. Lee. What else is... I'm looking on IMDb. Oh, The Count of Monte Cristo, The Three Musketeers. Okay, he's made some good stuff.
Wow.
In fact... Yeah. Okay. So yeah, he's a talented director. I can see how he went ahead and got this made.
Yeah, I mean, he made a good movie.
Yeah,
good
absolutely.
for him. I mean, again, sometimes you look at movies like that, the original Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, and you kind of go, how do we follow it up? And good on him. Good job.
Yeah, he did well. I mean, James Whale directed those first two movies, so he had big shoes to fill, and he filled them pretty decently.
I mean, he got creative. He didn't really repeat anything. I mean, in a kind of way he did, but like we said, Wolf is completely different from Henry. So...
One last thing I want to talk about before we wrap this one up is I really love the monologue that Lionel Atwell as Inspector Krogh gives when he's describing when the monster chased him down and ripped his arm off as a child. It's pretty haunting the way he recounts that story.
The way he always lifts it, has to manually lift his arm up. Oh, I mean, that's another thing. They didn't have to do that, but that was just like another layer added to the film. Again, good on them.
Absolutely. Ultimately, I think what makes this one is this is a true actor's movie.
Because the story, if you think about it, there really isn't a story. Wolf shows up, meets Igor, brings the monster back to life, beats it. But it's like, it's all about the characters and their interactions. And like you said, it's an actor's movie.
Yeah. So anything else we want to say on this one?
Great film. I still like Bride better, but that's not anything against this film in the slightest. This is a fantastic follow-up to Bride, and probably so far the most definitive death the monster's gotten.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
Didn't he blow up when he fell into the sulfur?
I think so, but either way, it's like you said, I'm not sure if it meets quite up to the first two. I mean, I love it. I think it's so damn good. I don't know where I would place it in the lineup. I love all three of the first three Frankenstein movies. I think they're a great trilogy. You will definitely, even if you're not a completionist, definitely check this one out.
Almost all the Frankenstein movies are if you find the box set, they're all the must-watches, at least, in my opinion. Most of them.
Absolutely.
You can probably skip House of Dracula if you want.
I have some things I'll say about that one.
House of Frankenstein is way better.
I agree, but I have one specific thing I definitely want to call out in House of Dracula, but
We'll get to that.
Say we got a while before we get there, but so yeah, great movie. Check it out if you haven't seen it.
absolutely.
So, again, we are counting down. This was a great installment, and Chad, what are we covering next?
Next week, or 2 weeks, I should say from now, we've got another sequel, The Invisible Man Returns.
Alrighty, well, come back again, and
We'll see how we feel. Take it easy, everyone.